Good morning. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming. So those of you who are from Vilnius may be familiar with Trafi as a journey planning app to plan your journeys, buy your bus tickets around the city. Those who aren't from Vilnius, it's a very popular way to plan your journeys here. In fact, we've just had our busiest month ever selling tickets. Typically, it coincides with the start of the school year as students start and plan their journeys here and find their way around the city. So what I'm going to talk a bit about today is how Trafi grew from its foundation here in Vilnius to being a supplier of our technology platform to cities across Europe. So a little bit of history for some of you, maybe the older amongst the audience may be familiar with the old sort of branding of the app here in Vilnius. It's evolved and now is an app. So it's a B2C app here. So operating under the Trafi brand. That's the only place that we operate under the Trafi brand. Everywhere else, we're a B2G, selling our products to government company. But it's one common technology platform, but with an important difference that here in Vilnius, we only deal with public transport. So we only help people plan journeys on buses and trams and only sell tickets for buses, whereas elsewhere, we also integrate scooters, bikes, car clubs, car share, taxis, ferries, so you can find, book, pay and ride for all the journeys in one app without having to download a different one. And there's an important reason for that, and I'll come back a bit to that later. But it's one technology platform that sits underneath, so the app here as used elsewhere. So I'll come to the specific details of some of these different places we operate as I go through this presentation. Really what I'm trying to look at are the lessons learned in the different cities where we've built the app. You can see here a sort of evolution from, on the left-hand side, the Trafi app in Vilnius, through to apps in other cities like Berlin, Brussels, operations in many different different countries and cities. The first one you can see there, over on the left, actually is an example that I think reinforces for those of you who are in one of the earlier presentations by Plug and Play, about how startup companies can cooperate with the public sector to build out products. And so in this case, Trafi, working in Vilnius, built a relationship with Berlin, who very bravely worked on a pilot project with this little Vilnius startup to try and discover whether it was possible, through cooperating with local mobility partners, to build one integrated at the app. At the time, everyone was saying that, if you think back, we've heard from Andreas at Uber talking about sort of cooperation with cities. There was a time that companies like Uber were sort of forgiveness, not permission. And that perception was sort of broken, I think, in Berlin, where they said if we work together and cooperate, actually we can make great things happen. And Berlin put the trust in us, and for Trafi, it was very much a sort of pilot project. What we got was the perfect opportunity to test out product market fit. We knew that the market wanted the product we were building because the market was telling us and guiding us as we built it. So, quick question here, or a point to make, is sort of why the need for a journey planning app? And we feel that this is vital if if you think that what you're actually trying to do is bring together a network of multiple mobility choices and make easy decisions of how to get from A to B. In a private car, which is the sort of competitor to what we're trying to promote, you just grab the keys, it's where you are, and it goes where you want to go to. One of the, I think, important considerations of shared mobility is it's typically a service that's not where you are, and it's typically not going exactly where you want to go to or when you want to go. So how do you overcome that? And we think technology and apps has a huge role to play here in removing that friction and complexity, particularly when there are floating modes, bikes, and scooters, which aren't necessarily where you left them yesterday. A bus stop is probably where it was last night. A car share or scooter probably isn't. And so you need to be able to plan the journey based on an app in real time. So we think these digital tools are vital for a city that wants to encourage people to make better travel choices. So first lesson learned here, I think, comes from Berlin, where they've done a great job of bringing together digital and physical infrastructure. So they, as I said, they've been right at the forefront of this, and they came up with the idea of a mobility hub or a mobility station where floating mobility modes in the city were brought together in one location, and they worked closely with typically private real estate, so schools, shopping centers, large offices which had car parks that dedicated some of their space in their car parks to putting in mobility hubs where all the different mobility providers in the city could bring their vehicles so long as they agreed to be in this app. So there was a sort of trade-off. Why should a private mobility provider put their vehicles in an app? Well, if you do that, you get to park your vehicles in these high footfall locations. And they were branded the same as the app. So someone walking around the street would see on every one of these locations the same Yelby, in this case, was BVG, the transport operator in Berlin's brand. The same brand appeared on the App Store, on the physical locations, and so there was a constant reinforcement of this brand, and it sent the signal to the public that the scooters and bikes and car clubs that were parked there were there with permission from the city. They were authorized, they were partners in the network. They weren't like a competitive network fighting against the buses and tubes, they were welcome. It's an important lesson learned in Berlin, I think. In Vilnius, very topical here on public or private, who should own these apps? And as I mentioned before, Vilnius remains the only B2C app that Trafi is operating. And it was a model that, turn the clock back 10 years, everybody thought this was the way it was going to work. Open data, 1,000 flowers bloom, lots of private apps using that data. There was ready access to venture capital at the time. Companies like Citymapper, where I worked previously, forged a path in that and got millions of users, but struggled to find a business model. In Vilnius, I think because of a great cooperation between Trafi and Udo, CISP, we have found a business model that works for both sides, but it remains the exception. And as a consequence of Trafi being a B2C private operator, that's really the reason that there aren't lots of other mobility providers in the app here. When I talked before about how in Vilnius, the Trafi app only has buses and no scooters, bikes, car clubs, taxis, that we have the technology is ready to do it, it's because those companies see us as maybe competitive, trying to steal the user in a way that when we're working in Berlin with our client as the city agency, they're much more ready to cooperate and see themselves as part of the solution. So it's the reason that the likes of Citymapper have struggled to get private operators to put their vehicles in the app, was because there was a fight over who owned the user. Build versus buy. This is, should a city use its own technology team to build one of these things? Hey, you can build a website, why can't you build an app? And I think that misses the point about what's the hard bit here. The hard bit isn't the front end. The hard bit is the journey planner. It's the integrations, it's the payment systems. These are all technology components that, let's be frank, you're competing for eyeballs against one of the strongest technology companies in the world, against Google Maps, Apple Maps. Their apps are pre-installed on a phone. Why should someone download your local app in the city and use it instead? And what's the chances that you can hire a development team that can, in a single push project, build something which can compete with something that the likes of Google has been doing for 20 years? Good luck, I'd say. So just go into it with your eyes open if you're going to do that. There are places that have tried, and actually we built a pilot project with Munich, and at the end of it, they decided to bring it in-house and to try building it themselves. They're still doing it. Their App Store ratings aren't quite what they were before, but we'll see how it plays out. So another area, and I think I've referred to this already, but it's so vitally important, is that cities, our customers, should see the mobility providers not as competitive, but as an opportunity for cooperation. This is a network of transport solutions that these companies, like Andreas from Uber was describing before, can provide services in locations where it's not economical for a city to provide a fixed route bus service. They can provide services at a time of day or night or weekend when, because of low ridership, cities can't economically provide service. Or at the end of the network, last mile, these scooters, bikes, car clubs can can provide service. And the example I give here is Solent in the UK, one of our apps. Because in the UK, unusually, all public transport or buses are provided by private companies. They're not state organizations, which means that even the bus companies in the UK are seen as private potential competitors. So there, Solent had to sort of work with everybody. The bus companies thought the scooter companies were competitors. The scooter companies thought the bike companies were competitors. So the challenge was to say to everyone, look, the competitor is the private car. It's the car keys next to the front door that you're going to grab. It's only by all of us working together that we provide a potentially competitive, convenient alternative to just grabbing the car keys. If we each squabble between ourselves, people will keep grabbing the car keys. And so cooperate with them, start early, get them in the example I gave in Berlin of these mobility hubs, then you can have a great solution. So last point here is just sort of coming back to that question about why should someone download your app in a city rather than just using Google Maps. And Google Maps is a fantastic product. Google is one of Trafi's largest customers for some of our technologies. And so I need to be careful what I say because they're very precious to us. But I feel that the Google product is great for your visitors to a city. Whenever I go to a city that I'm not familiar and haven't downloaded the local app in, of course I'll use Google. It's a terrific global product. But in my city, I want my city administrators, I want my mayor, my transport agency to take advantage of the competitive advantage, the comparative advantage that you have in your city is that you run the network. You know what's going on and what's going wrong every day. If there's roadworks, if there's schedule changes to the buses, if they're running delayed, you're telling the drivers what to do. So surely you can tell the passengers what you told the drivers. So my advice to our city clients is to really double down on becoming excellent at real-time disruption information, delay information. A local here in Vilnius maybe doesn't need an app to find their way around. They know the bus routes they use. They know why do they need an app apart from when things are going wrong? And that's when the city, the agency, has a real advantage. And my advice is to our city clients is always become the most trusted source of real-time and disruption information, and then people will load your app, and then you will build a relationship that becomes a communication channel with your riders locally, and you can start to nudge and change their behaviors through pricing, through whatever means you want, using the relationship and the app and the usage that you've generated. So focus on the locals, not on trying to do something for visitors. So, good. Thank you very much for your time. If there are any questions, I shall be around for the rest of the day, and it'd be great to meet you. Thank you.